So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself.
Well, I just wanted to say to you that, it was at this point of absolute Christian Science, and I think I mentioned that to you before, that I had so much to sort out about these things, these questions about when these laws come in of life, truth, and love, truth, life, and love, and truth and love, it seemed to, you just have to understand what it's like to have this experience of this new vision of the calculus coming in. And it was as though one could flow so beautifully from science to divine science, and then the moment you touched absolute Christian Science, it was like a flurry of different phenomena coming in. So, and especially when I came to that last law on absolute Christian Science, the law of truth and love. So it was causing me to have to be clearer and clearer about what we are doing here. You see, what were we doing? What is the orientation? That's the question. That seems to come up again and again. What is your orientation? From what standpoint are you asking the question, and what is the question that you are asking about the synonymous terms? So it was coming up very, very much when I touched this level of absolute Christian Science that there needed to be more clarity, and it really stopped me in my tracks for about a good week or eight days or so, that I couldn't go forward until I was quiet enough to hear God speak about the place value of those laws, how those laws, what role they played in the whole orientation that we're taking. So you see, because when you look at those laws, you see that they are the laws of life, truth, and love, those four laws, and that the whole issue focused really when I was working with the final synonymous term. That was really the crux of it when it came to the synonymous term love, because you see, love is the only synonymous term that appears in every one of those four laws. I just toss this out for you to know, to realize that, one comes to a rough spot in the work, in the findings, that things can flow along nicely, and then you come to like a rough patch where you've got so much going on. I had so much going on that level of absolute Christian Science, with all of these values of the calculus being represented through four laws of life, truth, and love, truth, life, and love, truth, and love, asking questions about our subject there that we're taking at the point of the synonymous term life and its ideas, truth and its ideas, love and its ideas. All of these categories were intersecting with each other. And I couldn't sort it out with the human mind. We know that. So I just had to pray over it, really. Be still over it. And I know one or two of you that I spoke with and told you about it, and I said, I know that there's something very big here because I've come to a terrific anomaly. It was an anomaly for me because I was getting results that were keyed to the laws, and I was getting results that were keyed to the synonymous term itself. I don't know whether you can follow me or not.
Yeah.
Can you?
And you have to sort through that.
Yeah. So I had to sort out the place values for life, truth, and love all throughout that level with its 4 laws. And I had to sort out the answer to the question, what is life in relationship to life's ideas? What is truth in relationship to truth's ideas? What is love in relationship to love's ideas? You see, which are the questions. That's the question that is key to answering the very issue that we are concerned with in our findings this week. So I was just swimming at that point because I had, well, what we just went through in relationship to that question about translation. You know, we talk about the translation of soul, we talk about the translation of the Christ, we talk about the translation of principle to idea. You have so many things going on at once, and all of those phenomena are governed by the categories and the relationships, how the categories are relating to each other. And that's what has to be very, very clear before one can discover those findings that are true, that are consistent with the whole issue that we are investigating here. So I had in the background those tonalities. I said that when I came to love, it was absolutely pronounced. I mean, the problem was at its highest, at the nth degree of the problem. Because at the point of love, I had in the background those tonalities of what love was in each law. You see, because love is the only synonymous term that appears in each one of those 4 laws on that level. You realize that? See? Not life, not truth, love. So that's why it came to a climax when I came to love. But that place value that love has in each one of the laws is a different orientation than the orientation we are taking. So I had to righten myself, so to say, back into the orientation of the right question that we're asking. I had to go back to that question that would yield the results that we want to achieve. And so the laws are a side issue. They are another orientation. And yet, they are there, and we can't totally ignore them because they create a background, they create a tonality, you see? The tonality of the word in absolute Christian Science, this is conveyed by life, truth, and love. The tonality of the Christ in absolute Christian Science, truth, life, and love, plays an absolutely crucial part in that tonality. And yet, it's the tonality that one needs in order to be able to apply that tonality to the question that we're asking about the synonym and its ideas. And that has to be held separate and apart from the actual place values of those synonymous terms in the laws themselves. If you don't get that, forget it. Either get it or forget it. Don't worry about it. It's just something that I feel happy to share with you because I think it's such a wonderful thing to see that one need not be afraid of anomalies because they are always indicating that there's a higher structure that you haven't seen. There's something more that you haven't seen. And we're tempted to say, the human mind is tempted to say, it's not easy, or to feel, oh, it's hard, or one is burdened by it. But I never like to think of that. I never like to think in that way, to think of doing something in science and that it would be either hard or easy. It isn't hard or easy. It's just science. It's just science. And that's what it was when I was going through that period. I didn't think, ooh, this is hard, or how am I going to figure this out? I just knew it was science, and that there were anomalies there, and I knew that if I would be true to the method of science, that those anomalies would lead me to something beautiful and something higher coming out of the whole resolution of the thing. So I think that's helpful to see that this is implied in science and in the meaning of being a scientist. Okay, well, thank you for letting me share that with you, or whatever it may be worth. So now we come to the level of Christian Science. How does soul come to us, to me? How does it come to the human situation and affect the human condition? And we know that at the point of the A, remember that we have now the A, the B, the C, and the D, and at the point of A, we have that breaking in now, really, of all that we have seen and understood soul to be. All that soul is breaks in on us now. And so it's the coming in, the breaking in of that infinite one soul, of that divine nature, that absolute truth of soul. Soul as we have seen it on the level of science, divine science and absolute Christian Science. That great wealth of the reality of soul breaks in on us and is breaking in on human consciousness everywhere. And it comes to us again in the form of the calculus. It is patterned by the calculus. So what does the word say? The word says that soul comes to us as spiritual understanding. And here again we have that value from soul, for soul from the third degree in the two translations. You see, you could ask yourself, well, why don't we have that in the Christ? See, when you're going through this, it's just a beautiful process of weighing, and of seeing how those categories apply themselves and how they begin to define and delineate what the truest findings can be for us at this point. So you have a term like spiritual understanding, and we know that that's the third term in the third degree of the second translation in the Christian Science textbook, page 115, 116. And we have given that term the value of the word. We have put it in our word findings. But you see that you could ask yourself, well, why don't we have that in the Christ? See? If it appears in the two translations, why don't we have it at the point of the Christ? If it's an outcome of the Christ translation, why don't we have it at Christianity? You see, if that third degree is the outcome of the working of the first translation on the first and second degrees, why don't we have it at the point of Christianity? All these questions come up when you just take this orientation. And I think I said to you that I'm not entirely sure that it does belong here. I just finally felt that I was being led to take one of the choices and the Word seem to weigh in most heavily at this point, because you know that the Christ translation shows us that the outcome of the working of the Christ is always appearing in and as the order of the Word. You remember that? So when you look at that third degree, you have the order of the Word. So even though we're looking at the operation of the Christ and the outcome of the operation of the Christ, it's in the Word order. Oh, these things are so beautiful. So the outcome that we see is the third degree, and it is in the Word order. The outcome is the outcome of the working of the Christ, and it is in the order of God's own nature. It's God's own nature in expression, and this is the Word. Is that clear? You have this same sort of thing with the epistles, when you come to the epistles, that they are showing us the Christianity matrix. They are presenting Christianity, and yet Paul, if you take for instance Romans, you see that Romans, you would think then, you see the human mind would think, oh, Christianity order, therefore Romans will be in the Christianity order. It isn't. It isn't. It's in the Christ order. It's in the Christ order. Because Paul must show the workings of the Christ and what the outcome of that is. That's how he will show Christianity. And yet at each point in that Christ order of Romans, as he takes each point in the Christ order, that Christ order of principle, life, truth, love, soul, spirit, mind, at each point along the way of the Christ order, he brings it out in the Word order. He uses the Word order to bring it out. So one feels somehow that that these terms, you see that in mind we had the breaking in of mind as the wisdom of mind, and in spirit the purity of spirit. Now we see that soul comes as spiritual understanding, or understanding spiritually. So all the way through we will have principle as is the spiritual power, and life as the I'm out of the rhythm of it now. You see, wisdom, purity, spiritual understanding, spiritual power, love, health, holiness. That each one of those has a place value that is a place value in the Word order. So I have put them down at the point of the Word. What does spiritual understanding really mean if we have to define it in terms of soul? You see? So if I say, well, define it in terms of soul, then I mean, don't give me a dictionary definition, don't tell me what you think it is, what somebody said, what you think it means from the standpoint of mind. I want to know, how can you verify that spiritual understanding is an idea of soul? So if I say, tell me, define it in terms of soul, I mean, go back to soul. How can you verify that spiritual understanding is an idea of soul and not an idea, say, of truth or mind? So what would you say? What does spiritual understanding mean? What does it have to do with soul? Would anybody like to volunteer? One of you said that understanding isn't locked in, but when it's spiritual understanding, it's locked in. And what does that mean to be locked in? What would soul call that?
Definite.
Definite, yes. The identity of it is set, right?
Yeah.
Huh? The identity of it is set. Yes. And where is that identity set, so to say? It's set in you, isn't it? Because this is now how it comes to us. You are identified with it. You are identified with soul. See? You're one with it. Whenever you are one with, you see, soul has so much to do with the identity of subject and object. And when we are one with it, you see, it means that we are identified with it, that it's not outside of us. What do I want to say? You see, it's that coincidence. That's what identity is, coincidence. It's where understanding becomes spiritual understanding, because to understand is to be able to recognize or to see the difference spiritually, therefore to be able to put order, to put order into the subject, to put order into the ideas of mind, to see order in the truth of mind and spirit. But when we have spiritual understanding, it's quite different. It means that we are identified with that which we know and understand. That you are one with that which you understand. It's not outside of you, you see. It's definite to you. So we see that what is happening is that we are grounded. We get spiritual understanding, wherein everything is made definite within us. Soul at this point names. It spiritually identifies us. We feel the definiteness of the spiritual idea within us. You know, you can just see that in the story of your own development, your own evolution of consciousness. One can see it, we can see it in each other. You know, I can remember going through the years, you begin to recognize when someone has touched that point of spiritual understanding, when it has made that shift away from just understanding to spiritual understanding. So we get that definiteness of the spiritual idea within us. It is us. And what does the Christ say about that? How does the Christ qualify that? It says, soul is that now which comes to us and testifies to the spiritual. It testifies to the spiritual right within us. At the point of the Christ, soul gives us our mission. It shows us who we are, gives us security, stability, safety. Actually, one could see that in two different ways, that you might feel, well, those would be the outcome of what the Christ is bringing us at this point, that then the outcome at the point of Christianity would be that we feel our security, our stability, our safety. But just talking a little bit more around this tonality of the Christ, you see that the Christ begins to work in us and to bring us the sense of our true selfhood. You see, what is that selfhood? It's the expression of our identity, who we are. It shows us our mission, our spiritual mission. What do we really mean by that term mission? It's what our identity is destined to do, you see, how it must express itself. So we get that sense of the Christ very, very much. And we could think of that sense of the security and definiteness and safety, certainty of the Christ, certainty in the idea, as the power of the Christ establishing the idea within us in a completely unassailable way. And what then is the outcome of that? This is a Christianity question, always the outcome, the output, the result, that we experience the unlimited freedom of soul, that soul frees us. Whenever we feel free, we have a sense of joy, you see. The realm, it's the realm really of the expression of that selfhood, that mission. This is a realm of freedom, of joy, where we're really being what we are, what soul ever eternally intended us to be and to do. And that this has a realm, it has a sphere of expression that is of the nature of joy, of happiness, of freedom, that we're not limited in any way. So it's true, isn't it? It's absolutely true. And so you see that out of that infinite capacity of soul, that infinite withinness really of soul, comes the sense of freedom, that we're not limited in any way. We're unlimited. We're not in anything, not even in a situation, never in a situation. We are in soul. Soul gives us a sense of joy and happiness and satisfaction. Soul comes to us as the beauty of soul. When we began, we had that term symmetry, and we said that symmetry has all to do with proportion and balance, and so we feel somehow that we are touched with the beauty of soul, the beauty of soul's own self-symmetry and balance. Gives balance to absolutely everything in our experience. It breaks in on us as that balance. And we have a sense of grace. It's not the grace of life here, because when we come to life, we'll see that grace also belongs to life, but in a very, very different way. But this is the grace that has to do with that beauty, the beauty and balance of living and being lived, you see, by soul through the Word and the Christ. The outcome of that is grace, beauty, balance. It is the poise of soul, you see, soul's very own symmetry and balance translated to us.